Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming. Today, and I'm going to say this a lot, it's a day of celebration, and it's important to me that we know that and we share that and that we lift each other up as we remember my mother, because she lived such a joyous life. She had a 32-tooth smile. You can see every one of them. Now, we've asked a couple folks to come and share stories about the amazing person that my mom was. But I have to open with her favorite, "I told you so." So I was 10 years old, and I was at Anderson School, and we have some Anderson teachers in the crowd and students. Shout out. PS9/334. And I loved it, and I was ready to go on to the magnet middle school. But my mother had heard about this place, Horace Mann, and she asked around, and people said it was just this amazing place, and she was like, "Well, Malcolm Wiley, why don't you apply? Why don't you see what it's like?" And I said, "No. I don't want to wear a uniform." They don't wear uniforms here. It's far away. We moved to Riverdale. I'm not going to bother with that, but could you say no to my mom? Like, anybody raise your hand if you ever got away with a no to Dianne Kirksey-Floyd. Couldn't do it. So I applied, I got here, and my eyes got wide. It was really the field, which is why it's beautiful that we're here. And I spent 7 amazing years here, and a lot of my best friends I met here. And my mother just really never let me forget it. I told you, you didn't even want to go. So before we kick it off, I just want to thank Dr. Kelly and all the folks who are our hosts here. And to thank you guys all for coming. The jokes about 2020 won't stop, huh? And so I know that y'all to be here, made a really important choice, and I'm really grateful, and I know that she would be too. So at this point, I want to welcome Copper, one of my mother's first friends in New York, to share some thoughts about my mom.
Oh, wow. Look what Dianne did. Praise God, from whom all blessings flow. And thank you, God, for the beautiful spirit of Dianne Faye Kirksey. I met Dianne in 1973 on the set of The Gambler. And we were extras, and we were just both full of possibilities in New York. And Dianne always had a possibility, I can do spirit. She was a princess that one day became a queen. She was a diamond in the rough that ended up becoming such a polished, beautiful diamond. And she loved her family, and her most precious production of all was her son, Prince, now a king, Malcolm Wiley Tecumseh. Now, in this life, you can be blessed with DNA, family. But if you're very fortunate, you can have kindred souls to walk this journey. Brother and sister spirits. And Dianne was truly a sister spirit. She was my OnStar before I had an OnStar. I'm telling you, I was so bad so-and-so, I'm stuck, I'm scared. She had it. When I decided I wanted to jump horses, Dianne took me to jump horses. Malcolm Wiley was a little boy, toddler. I'd carry him up on my back, up on the ramp, Claremont. He would talk baby talk to the horses. They loved him. And she invited me to watch him win his black belt. I think you were, what, 9 years old? Kindred sister spirit. So today is a day of celebration of a beautiful life. And I had so many stories. We had champagne celebrations. She was at my first picnic. I mean, we partied. I mean, it was like chocolate auntie veins. Boy, we lived life. Life for us was always a banquet. And I know Dianne is smiling, looking down at her family, her sister and brother friends. And I know God has another special angel. She was our earth angel, and now she's our heavenly angel. Thank you. Sorry, everybody.
Good afternoon, everyone. I first met Dianne Kirksey through my late husband, Ozzie Brown. Ozzie first met Dianne when she moved to New York City to pursue a career in theater, and they remained friends ever since. Ozzie adored Dianne and would proudly tell me how special she was and how loved and revered her family was in the civil rights narrative. However, although Dianne was a big part of our family through her relationship with Ozzie, it wasn't until his passing that I really got a chance to get to know Dianne on my own. She was such a crucial part of my support system during that time. When Ozzie passed, she flew over to the house with a shopping cart full of groceries and began cooking up a storm. As I struggled to write the obituary, she came over and was very upset because I started his journey from when I met him. She felt that what I'd written did not represent the fullness of his life from when she knew him. So using her gift for writing, she helped create an obituary that she felt was befitting of the person she knew. So Dianne, right everybody, Miss Take Charge. From that moment, we established a deep friendship, and I got a chance to experience the beautiful spirit that was Dianne Kirksey-Floyd. One of the things you notice about Dianne when you first meet her is that she's stunningly beautiful. However, it doesn't take long for you to realize that she's so much more than that. She was an amazing educator and teacher. We spent hours talking about schooling, the educational institution, and students. But she would light up like a Christmas tree, and her voice seared with passion when discussing the ideas and projects she had in her head for creating documentaries, films, screenplays, reality TV shows, and pilots, you name it. She had an idea for it. That is how versatile and creative she was. She was anxious to reach retirement so she could spend all her time on her true passion and calling, which was storytelling, whether the written word, film, or stage. However, Dianne wasn't one to sit around and wait for retirement. She created things and made them happen. While working a full-time job and running a successful Airbnb in her home, she found the time along the way to direct, write, and act and film one of my favorites, Sweet Dreams Mama, about her mother. And although she might in her mind have viewed her role as an educator and separate from her role as filmmaker, on the outside looking in, it was clear that she approached both with the same level of artistry. Dianne loved her family, both immediate and extended, and was proud of the Kirksey name and what it represented. She totally embraced who she was and where she came from and wore the family legacy with great pride. If you're a friend of hers, at some point she's going to drag you to a bar to watch Alabama Crimson Tide.
Roll Tide!
Roll Tide! Roll! She couldn't wait for someone to drive down to her hometown and reconnect. When my son and I attended her mother's funeral in Utah, she was proud to house us in the bedroom she shared with her grandmother. One morning we woke up early and she took me around the area and showed me the Kirksey lands and the sacred mound that her great-grandmother would go to pray. She spoke with great pride about the history of each piece. We laughed as we passed a barbed wire fence around one of the properties, and a bold-faced cow used his head to separate the barbed wire and stepped right through the fence and broke free and strolled away, much to the surprise of the other cows. We joked that it must be a Kirksey cow. You can't fence a good Kirksey in. They will find a way out somehow. When it was time to bring her mother to New York to live with her, she made careful preparations and left no stone unturned. Her mom was treated like the queen she was and took her everywhere. I watched her juggle home health care, full class of boisterous fourth graders, medical appointments, and spending weekends as her mother's primary caregiver. On top of that, she would come and teach at my school on Saturdays to help our struggling readers. Although Dianne was a mother, a woman of many accomplishments, her greatest pride was her son, Malcolm Wiley. You could not talk to her for more than 15 minutes before she would mention his name, what he was doing or creating, and her hopes and dreams for him. She was private about her health battle, but thank you, Malcolm Wiley, for taking such good care of her. Dianne was a born leader. She always stood out and was successful at whatever she decided to do. Whether she was a sexy pinup in Jet magazine, Grandma Bell in Homecoming Court, educator, writer, actor, director, and a good friend, her creativity knew no bounds. Never standing still, she almost added a doctorate to her resume. Forever an activist, she was fierce and feisty when it came to social justice issues. Fear was not in her vocabulary. She spoke her mind, whether it was for the rights of a student in her classroom, in support of her teacher colleagues as a United Federation of Teachers chapter chairperson, or defending a friend in need. She was not afraid to stand up and speak up with that sweet, sweet Alabama Southern drawl. But don't get it twisted, she can cut you like a razor if she smelt injustice. So I practiced Nishan Buddhism, and Dianne would bring her mother to the Cultural Center on 15th Street, and we would chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo together for peace throughout the world and the happiness of all human beings. As Buddhists, we view life and death as alternating aspects of life that is eternal. The state of death is vital to life because it gives a chance for rest and recuperation, just as sleep does when we are alive. So rest well, Dianne, until the conditions are right for you to come back refreshed and ready to finish what you started. In the meantime, you will be greatly missed. Hi, everybody.
Thank you.
I'll do this after I finish as well. Okay. I'm Judy Tate. I love Dianne like a sister. When We were younger, we knew each other as actors in New York. Our paths would cross because we would sometimes go up for the same roles, maybe be extras in the same film. We hung out at Frank Silvera's workshop. And then as time went on and we had families and this and that, our lives grew apart. And then we came back together when I was asked to chair, is that the right? The Harlem Dramatic Writers Workshop. And I had a wonderful, wonderful experience of working with Dianne, again, as a different person, and also Malcolm Wiley, who joined the workshop. And we became close once again, just like nothing had ever separated us. Our families were both from Alabama, the same parts, and we always laughed that the Kirksey family and the Tate family were the ones that left and went to Chicago, and the Kirkseys were the ones that stayed, and together we bookended the Alabama experience in America. This past 2 years, I had the joy of working closely with Dianne, first on a play that I wrote, In the Parlor, which is about the 1913 struggle for Black women to join the first women's march for voting. And a lot of people didn't know this, but Mary Church Terrell and Alice Paul sort of had to negotiate strategically. And so it's the strategic negotiation, and I said, Dianne, I'm looking for a director. Dianne said, here. And she was magnificent. She brought so much humanity to this story. Every character on stage was just, multi-dimensional. They had relationships. I have never worked with a more profoundly talented and brilliant director than Dianne Kirksey-Floyd. And then when all of this happened, we were going to do it in the fall, and when that happened, I had gotten some grants for it, and Dianne and I said, you know what? We're going to do this as a radio play. And we did, and we put it together with 2 other plays called Black Women in the Ballot. The other play that I wrote was called Pulling the Lever, about 3 generations of Black women, of women, of getting the vote. And The Elder was based on, I had written it, but through talking with Dianne, I said, Dianne, this is going to change because I'm basing this on your work with the Children's Crusade. And that's what happened, and we put it up, and it resides on the American Slavery Project YouTube channel. I'm going to read not an obituary because I think that cannot be done better, but I'm going to read the opening of Dianne's most recent pilot that she developed in the Harlem Dramatic Writers Workshop. And you'll see this character, Joanne. How's that? I'm not talking too loud or too small, right?
Doing great.
Okay, great. And you'll know from the last moment of this exactly who Dianne Kirksey was. Now, Dianne Kirksey-Floyd. Fade in. Alabama, early 1960s. It's the credits montage. Joanne's life in segregated Black Alabama. Joanne at Carver High School basketball game of rivals with friends, all Black, skin hues across the spectrum. At church with friends and extended family, all Black. Tuscaloosa, family driving through town and down University Boulevard. Don't stop. Family at Stillman College game. Vivian Malone, the beautiful first African-American student to graduate from the University of Alabama, walks through causing a stir. Gymnasium, all Black. Stillman College, private piano lessons. Professor, Black. Tuscaloosa, family driving down University Boulevard. Don't stop. Majorettes at Carver, all Black. Joanne and all Black friends at military funeral. Photo of young Black soldier by the casket watching the folding of flags. Tears flow. a production of Romeo and Juliet, all black, Joanne in balcony scene as Juliet. Joanne is head cheerleader at Carver. Family huddle frozen, stare at burning church. They comfort each other. Graduation photo, Joanne at the podium. 45 graduates on risers behind the podium. Principal, teachers in photo, all black. George Wallace, Alabama's segregationist governor, in front of Foster Auditorium, in front of the schoolhouse door with federalized Alabama National Guard and Nicholas Katzenbach in view. End credits montage. Act 1. Tuscaloosa, downtown, 1967 day. The Kinsley family, guess who that is, drive car down University Boulevard and turns off the wide boulevard lined with trees, Grecian-style columns, fraternities and sororities, old statuesque office and class buildings. Modern buildings show evidence of Big Bear Bryant football money, Denny Stadium. And makes a left turn at the base of the towering granite steps of the Student Union Building into the inner streets and paths of the great University of Alabama. Rose Hall, 2 trunks, an 8-piece set of matching luggage, dresses and garment bags, wrapped boxes, etc. are stacked beside the car. Wiley, Gladys, Grandma, Vel, baby Winifred, little Wiley, and Joanne stare at the campus of white students and the dormitory building that faces them. University of Alabama campus, Joanne is all smiles, practically skips across the campus. Film department auditorium. The well-appointed auditorium has state-of-the-art equipment, seats 300 students, a lecture podium sits to the side. The film professor, 30s, a bit disheveled, white, wire-rimmed glasses, rumbles through his papers. Joanne sits in the front row. She is early. A girl, white, looks for a seat on the front row, near Joanne. Joanne, happily, "Good morning." The girl stares, doesn't speak, walks past Joanne. Joanne, surprised, doesn't know what to make of this. Other students fill the auditorium, whisper, sneak a look at her, sit in all the other seats. Students fill the front row except for the seat on either side of Joanne. The final students trickle in, see the empty seats next to Joanne, walk to the aisle near the wall, sit in the aisle instead. The auditorium fills up except for 2 seats. Joanne, the lone black speck in a sea of white faces. She strains, turns just her head to see the entire auditorium, sees every other seat taken except those on either side of her, sits up straighter, taller, keeps her eyes focused on the professor, defiantly puts her books on one of the empty seats. Film professor. To you future filmmakers, film critics, and you film fans, welcome to the history of film. She takes out a 3-subject spiral notebook, University of Alabama, opens it, writes the date, 9/15/1967, early film history. Film professor says, some say that real film began with the Lumiere brothers who shot a scene from the back of a train. Now the action is getting close to what we now know as film. Joanne writes, Lumiere brothers. Film professor says, you get the general idea. Read the packet carefully. There will be a test on key points. Joanne writes, packet, 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 closes her notebook. But today, I want to focus on continuity of motion and editing, the heart of telling a story through the medium of film. The Paquet brothers in France. Joanne opens her notebook and hurriedly adds continuity, motion, editing, making bullet points. Paquet brothers. Their film, Les Chevaux Emballés, the runaway horses. This is where cross-cutting between parallel actions really makes the film. She adds cross-cutting. edges to the front of her seat. She's enthralled. In Russia, the great Sergei Eisenstein, the master of the montage, his masterpiece, he gets impassioned, gestures, strikes his hand with his fist as he talks for emphasis. Battleship Potemkin, putting shot after shot after shot together, building the emotion of each shot. Joanne writes, Potemkin. The scene, he says, on the Odessa steps, the faces of the civilians as they are being shot, the soldiers close-up long shots, but we don't have it to view. He shrugs. The students groan. The film professor, but don't despair. American filmmakers perfected the montage, and I do have a film to show you. The crowd cheers, the screen drops, the lights dim, a hush fills the room. On the screen, the images of the black men in D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation fill the screen. Image after image of disgusting black male buffoonery and the innocent white damsel in distress. Shocked, Joanne shrinks down in her seat, eyes wide, appalled. Furtively, she sneaks a look at her classmates, then at the teacher. Her anger and her embarrassment grow. First, a snicker from the crowd, then louder, until the whole auditorium explodes in laughter. Some students strain to get a look at Joanne. They point, they laugh. She sees them. Joanne slowly gathers her books. She stands, purposefully walks up the long aisle, head up, shoulders erect, step by step, head held high until she exits the back of the auditorium and out of the building.
How's this? Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Judith Rogers, and I have been, and was, it's very hard to say, a dear friend of Dianne's for 25 years. And we met when our two sons, Malcolm Wiley and my son Matthew Rosenfeld, were in kindergarten together at the Anderson program in, what year was that, 1995? We became fast friends, and we went through basically everything together over the next 25 years. So that includes working on committees together. We were in Friends of Anderson. I was the president of the Friends of the Anderson program, and she was by my side the whole time. We worked on those committees. We got them through school. We got them into the next school, and the next school, and the next school. And then we moved and she moved to Riverdale, I moved to Riverdale. Then it became parents, the loss of parents, everything. We spent holidays together. So when I say that it feels like I'm losing an arm, that's how it feels. We talked all the time. But the core of our connection, which made us so close, has already been sort of described as a sisterhood. Yes, that's true. And as Judy so beautifully and eloquently depicted, was our creative partnership. Dianne and I shared a passion and a vision for ourselves as creative artists. And even though we came from very disparate backgrounds, we had a common purpose, and we shared some common obstacles. And that purpose was we were determined to find a way to express ourselves and create change through our art. Change societally, change personally, change on the individual level of the people whom we touched. that was our goal. And the obstacles were, for two young women growing up in the 1950s in America, it was made for white men. There was sexism, there was racism, there was every ism that was really not about recognizing the contributions of artistic young women, buying for themselves and not supporting them either. So we were on our own, and we had to draw from our own resources, and we supported each other along the way. And one of the things that Dianne did was take me to the workshops, the Harlem Collaborative workshops. And I spent, before Judy was there, and I studied with Jamal Joseph, and I really got to see that screenwriting was not for me. This was clearly not my I did a pilot. I got a lot of praise from Jamal, but I thought, no, there's something to take from this and bring it into my own realm, which was fiction writing. And the next year I said, Dianne, I can't hang out with you. I'm writing a novel. And she said, don't hang out with me. Don't. Your novel, your work, your art means so much more. That was the kind of friend she was. And that was how I got the novel done. I finished it. It took 5 years, but I finished it. In part because of Dianne's belief in me. That was who she was. And I hope that I contributed that to her too, by the constant support that I gave her for her work, which was, as everyone has said, interspersed between all the other jobs we had to do as women, growing up at the time that we did, coming of age in the 1970s, when there really wasn't a space for women to say, I'm going to do it because I want to. I'm not going to be your helper. I'm not. That's not who I am. I'm not your second. I'm my first, and that's what I'm going to be. There wasn't a space for that. There still barely is. So interspersed with all the other things we were doing, we still found time, and she still found that time. And the beautiful thing about it is that in the last year, as she knew her time was limited, she closed ranks, and she drew on the brilliant support of these two great kids to get her story told, and to get her work recognized, and to go out on a high note, to go out soaring. I love you, Dianne. I miss you terribly. It's already so painful. I'll always love you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dianne J. Harris, and I'm a playwright. And now I understand why Dianne was correcting her information in the Wikipedia Encyclopedia. If you go in there, you will find her, and the information is not correct. Yeah. But I met Dianne through the Frank Silvera Writers Workshop. We've done 20 years of art and running the streets together. And we had a wonderful life together. Dianne, and I'm going to tell you a story. The first story I'm going to tell you about Dianne, this is who she is. I was having a show at the National Black Theater, and the actress for the weekend couldn't show up, and I didn't have a backup. And I told Dianne about it. I said, Dianne, what am I going to do? I said, do you think you can do the show for me for a couple nights? And she says, girl, are you crazy? I said, no. She said, give me the script. I gave her the script, and in 2 days, Dianne had learned the script, and she went on 2 performances that weekend for me. And she cussed me out a little bit. But then she said, Dianne, I did this for you. And that's who Dianne was. She was loyal, and if she said she was going to do something for you, she would do it. And that's who I loved. We all loved her. That's why we're here. But I met her in the late 80s at the Frank Silvera Writers Workshop, and back then it was really, really happening back there in Frank Silvera. Monday nights we were having the readings, and then the classes on the rest of the days. and we were all kind of writing, but I had done this, my first play, Why Old Ladies Cry at Weddings, and I noticed in the program it says, Wild Ladies. And you can say that about us. But I was workshopping the play, and Randy Frazier got the script, and he said, Dianne Kirksey needs to direct this. And Dianne wasn't directing then. She was getting Malcolm Wiley taken care of in school. You know, he was just a little tight then, and my kids were little, and we were doing school and the mommy thing on top of the art thing. And she didn't want to do it. And Randy said, Dianne, you got to see this script. You know, this is your play. And she saw the script and she said, you're right. And before Dianne was done with the play, which I had written as a drama, it turned into a hot, sexy comedy. and we had a hit play in Harlem that was hot and sexy and funny. I mean, it was so funny that the people in the audience would talk back to the stage. So that's who Dianne was. We played with this play for years. In fact, just recently, a couple years ago, we had another reading of it with another cast, and it's just been so much fun to work with her. So Malcolm Wiley asked me to read the last monologue of the play. And the play was really about a young woman who was a mother who actually cheated on her husband and got caught, of course. And just how it affected everybody's life who was involved. So I'm going to read an excerpt from Why Old Ladies Cry at Weddings. And this is Christine, the main character, who has decided that, you know, she's going to go straight now. I know I made another mistake. I broke my vows. I violated my family. I lied. I dirtied myself like they do. Men I'm talking about. I had no motivation. He was fine. That's all. He was nice. So nice. I have to say it twice. Nice, nice. Yeah, I went after the fineness, and for what? A baby in my belly, trouble in my home, a scandal in my church, and a gun in my face. I just wasn't thinking. Well, not with my head. See, I know Richard has other women. He's always had other relationships. I can tell. There's a sixth sense that goes like radar when I suspect a different vibration. So he can do it, but I can't. That's why old ladies cry at weddings. They know. They know it's not fair. They know how hard it's going to be to follow all those rules. It's damn near impossible. Damn near impossible. Old ladies do cry at weddings. And old men, they just grunt. Thank you guys. Thank you.
So I met NW Dianne almost to the day 20 years ago on that corner, actually on the way to 6th grade orientation under the door. And NW and I became best friends instantaneously, immediately. We spent every day together in school, weekends at each other's places, and naturally, Dianne became my second mother. And the past week I've been thinking a lot about everything that she taught me. And the first I would say is hard work. Dianne was tough. she could be pretty tough on us. But man, when you got her approval, you were like, you're doing the right thing. You know, you knew you were on the right path, and that was so important. The second was how to be strong and independent. She always fought, you've heard it, she always fought for what was right for herself, for her family, for her friends, and it's something that I've admired and will always remember. But the one thing that I'll always remember about Dianne is, it sounds pretty simple, but she always showed up. She always was there for you. Whether it was middle school basketball games, we were there, high school football games there, or even at away games. She was the loudest one of the game. There weren't many people. But she was always there when we were away. And I really always appreciated that about her. And though he was in countless other after school activities, she was always there. And that continued as we got older. So a bunch of our friends have birthdays in June. We have a super birthday, we call it. And Dianne was the only parent to show up every year, without fail, with cake and candles. And it's absolutely incredible. And she came out to my wedding in Gowanus. She would have gone further. But she came to support me and tell me how proud she was of me. And she means a lot. You know, it sounds simple, but I think we all know it's a little harder than it is to show up, and she just did it. And I think we should celebrate her life by just being there for the people we love and the people we care for. It's what she would have wanted, what we should do. And it really means a lot. So I will always thank Dianne for everything she taught me. And I always thank her most of all for giving me my best friend in the world. And I know she'll still always show up in our hearts and in our memories. So, thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Mary Lou Kozel speaking to you, partially from the Anderson School. There are some Anderson representatives in the audience. Let's hear it for the teachers who are going through a lot right now. Let's hear it for the parents and the students who are sharing the burden. You heard about Dianne's love of the Alabama football team, and this will show you exactly how influential she could be. I'm a Notre Dame fan. Our lives revolved around Notre Dame and the Kozel family. But Dianne would say to me, come with me to the Bama bar, we're gonna watch the national championship. Roll Tide. And there went the scotch and her bourbon, and you were lightweight at that time. But to convince me to go to an Alabama football game when my Polish Catholic family are Notre Dame fans, if my family knew, I would be excommunicated from the Kozel family. So that shows you what kind of influence she had. I'll start with the fact that August, we both celebrate our birthdays. Mine is August 11th, hers is August 2nd. And therefore, as always, I texted her on August the 2nd, received a response, and she texted me on August 11th, and sent her a thank you, and here we are. It's a little surprising. But what I thought about was, August. We're both August babies. We're Leos. The lion is the king of all beasts. The lioness is the queen of all beasts, meaning us. Dianne was a lioness. She was a queen. I had a conversation with her over drinks and after school, and I looked at her and I said, you know what? You would be my Grandma Kozel's favorite person in the universe. She's like, why? And I said, well, I'm going to give you a little Polish saying. Once in a while during life, you have to wyrzucić kozioł. And what that means is you gotta shake it up. But Mary Lou, Marisha, choose your points. Don't do it all the time. Choose your battles, choose your fights. And get out there and shake it up when you have a belief in a cause. You think something is not right, the truth isn't out there. And that was totally Dianne. She would shake it up like no one I've ever met. Now, the one thing I want to tell you about how she shakes things up is she does it a little differently than many people. And this is why I have such respect for her as a coworker, as a teacher, and as a human being. If she was after a cause or trying to defend something, she knew the history of that cause, she knew the geopolitics of that cause, she knew the economics of that cause, she knew the cultures, the traditions, the religions, the languages. She had a huge toolbox of knowledge that she could bring when she was going to argue a point with someone, which I rarely have ever seen in anyone else. And what's nice, what's interesting is, immediately you think of Dianne knowing African history, right, African culture. But she was not just about African history and culture. She was very, very knowledgeable with Asia. She was knowledgeable with Europe. She was knowledgeable with North and South America, Australia, Antarctica. I mean, does everybody know there's 7 continents? I hope you do. But the bottom line is that's what made her such a great teacher, is the stash of knowledge she had. One day we're driving back from a meeting in Atlantic City that our principal Jody had for us. And we both had to drive back because we were both taking care of our mothers at the time and we couldn't stay overnight. And I was telling Dianne something about a book that I was reading about Lyndon Baines Johnson. And she goes, I respect him for civil rights and what he pulled off in 1964, but that was a coup d'etat. I'm like, what? She goes, that was a coup d'etat. And we started talking about the fact that she thought, and she's probably right, that he was involved in the murder of the President of the United States. And she had details like Clinton Murchison and J. Edgar Hoover flew in. I'm like, oh, this is so good. So I go home, I go to the library or I go to the bookstore and I buy everything I can on LBJ. But that's what made her such a great teacher and a great partner no matter what you did with her. She had this enormous stash of knowledge, and if she didn't know something, she wouldn't fake it. She'd go and look it up. Of course, she'd come to me, of course. But that's one of the things I love about her. Something else, I hate when people ask you this question. If you could describe yourself with one word, what would it be? Oh, I hate that. But I decided I was going to describe Dianne with one word, and there was no doubt in my mind the word is joyous. She has a joy internal to herself that she had from birth that just came out. She glowed. And whether she was in a tough situation or if she was in a celebratory situation when Bama won, she always glowed and she always was willing to take those challenges on in a positive way. And I think that's amazing. Now, the third thing I want to talk about, and this is a true story, get ready. Dianne is a very adventurous person. You say so? Well, my brother who works in the Department of Defense, who adores Dianne, and they met, calls me and says, I'm coming to New York, I have to work on a project, I have to do some research. Call Dianne, I'm taking you guys out to dinner, we're going to Sparks. Anybody know what Sparks is known for? The murder of several Cosa Nostra people. Now I'm sitting there going, oh my God, he's up to no good, my brother. He's up to good because he works for the United States, but still. So Dianne comes in and I look at her and Peter comes in and he goes, I've made sure that I have a table. I need you two to sit with your backs to the wall. And she's looking at me going, this is cool. I'm like, should I pour the red wine now? And she pour away. And bottom line is, it worked out fine. But I love the fact that she thought that was cool. Because she knew exactly, you didn't have to say to her what went on at Sparks. She knew exactly. Castellano was murdered at Sparks, outside of Sparks. It's a big mafia hangout. Some crazy stuff has happened there. So, I just want to close with another true story that took place on Monday and Tuesday. On Monday, I had received from one of our teachers, Charlie, the news that Dianne was very ill. So I wrote to Malcolm and I said, you know, can I come visit? And he goes, yes, please come tomorrow, which was Tuesday. And then I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I gotta give her something, right? I wanna give her something religious and, you know. So I run into my bedroom, I open up the drawer, and I see a scapular there. Given to me by my mother, who believed I needed to have at least 25,000 religious articles in my house at any one time. So anyway, the scapular was beautifully wrapped. The scapular is a necklace that you wear with the Blessed Virgin Mary on it that says, you know, the Blessed Virgin will take care of you during life and during death. So I'm like, perfect, Mom, way to go. I got it. Now, that was around 12:30ish, right? What time did your mom pass? 12:30, 1 o'clock? Well, it just so happens that that is the anniversary of my mother's death 4 years ago. And Dianne and I were with each other through our father's deaths because her dad died a month after mine, and we were with each other, the same story with our mother's deaths. And I'm standing there after I learned this going, Lily, I think it was you who told me that. And I was interested in knowing, oh my God, Louise, I couldn't believe it. So Dianne is a part of my Polish family forever. I'm sure she's probably telling my mother that the scapular is lovely. But the chances of that happening, I think, are very minimal. And so what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to, because Dianne appreciated culture so much, I'm just going to say the end of the Hail Mary, but I'm going to do it in Polish. And here we go. Święta Maria, Matka Boska, uczam, że nam życzymy teraz I godziny śmierci nasze. Amen. And what that really means is, take care of me while I'm living and take care of me through my death. And so with that, Dianne, I just want to say I love you to pieces. You're like a sister to me. God bless you forever. I will miss you terribly, 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 terribly.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Joyce Griffin, and I was scheduled to sing a song for Dianne. But I left my home at 4 o'clock, and I got to my car, it wouldn't start, and it took me until, 15 minutes ago to get here. So I'm not quite up to singing a song. But I am here. Dianne and I have been friends for ages. We began as actresses together way back in the aughts. And one of the memories that we giggle over every now and then when we reminisce is way back then I started a public relations company, and Dianne was one of my first clients. And that was the time when she was in the Marva Collins story, and she played Cicely Tyson's sister in the film. Well, we always giggle because even though it was my company wasn't a year old yet, I got her fantastic press and pictures everywhere. And she said after her press card came out, the next time she saw Cicely Tyson, she laughingly said, "I'm mad at you because you got better press than I did." So that's one of my good memories of Dianne. And since I'm not going to sing, I had planned to insert this in the song, but I see there are a number of us who are members of a writing workshop that Dianne has been a member of for several years. And there's playwriting, there's screenwriting, there's TV writing, there's short films. And it was with our short film professor, Eddie Pomerantz, with his guidance that Dianne made a short film about her mom, which is wonderful. I'm sure Malcolm Wyler will make it available somehow for people to see it. But anyway, none of our professors could be here at short notice, but Professor Eddie Pomerantz sent me something to read. So this is it. This is the story of a table, and for a lady named Dianne, that's lady with a capital L, and Dianne with 2 N's, brought to it. This table is large, And for almost 3 decades now, hundreds of storytellers have sat at it every Saturday for 5 hours, 8 months a year. These storytellers in a group are called the Harlem Dramatic Writing Workshop. And this table is important because this is where they bring their stories and get the chance to write them as movies, plays, and television shows. Which brings us to Dianne, whose seat at the table is empty now, but will still always be hers. Because what she brought to the table was all of herself. Her mind, body, imagination, spirit, energy, love, wisdom, insights, experience, talent, her whole being, fully present, eager to learn and teach and give and share. All of yourself. That's what showing up at the table demands of us, and why Dianne Kirksey-Floyd will still be sitting there, living in all of us. And there's a lot of us right over there. And this is from Professor Eddie Pomerantz. Thank you.
I just want to thank everyone who spoke so beautifully about my mom. All right, buckle up. We're gonna be here for a minute. While I'm talking, while I'm here, if I falter a little bit, just call out, "Come on, Doug! You got it!" Let me hear one. Let me hear, "Come on, Doug." Come on, Doug. You got it. I'm gonna need y'all. So I wanted to talk about what it's like being Dianne's son. Because that's me, you know. I've been Dianne's son for longer than I've been Malcolm Wiley. You know, she was such an amazing woman. And I know there are a lot of mothers in the crowd, and I don't want to talk down on y'all. She was the best mother in the whole wide world. And you know, it wasn't always easy. You know, I have so many of my family members here today that all came in to New York to help me celebrate my mom. And we have our beautiful found friend family that has always been so supportive, you know, but in a lot of ways it was me and her. You know, my dad, my mom and I had to leave my dad when I was 3 years old. And I really barely even remember him, but I remember, you know, me and my mom, and we would hop from apartment to apartment. We would hop, you know, from school to audition to side hustle, and it was always, you know, it was always the two of us. And in that way, you know, she gave me so much strength because she was so strong. She had strength for days. She gave strength to everybody under this tent that we have overflowing to respect her, which I love to see. And that strength I will always have, and that's part of how, you know, I'm here at this podium today, you know, on such a hard day. Now, she didn't always mother by the books. There were some lessons I learned earlier than a lot of kids. There are some things she taught me that I might not teach my kids, but that's what it was like to grow up as Dianne's son. I remember I was maybe, I was like 4 or 5, and the Upper West Side, that was kind of, you know, that was my fiefdom. You know, I could kind of go wherever I wanted to go, down the block, get some pizza, and there were some older kids who were messing with me. And then my mom read about this horrible story about a kid who got kidnapped. And a lot of moms would have said, okay, well, time for you to come into the apartment. No. My mother said, it's time for you to learn how to fight. And that next week, I started with Taekwondo. And, it was right on 92nd Street in Amsterdam, and I would come home and she would say, show me what you learned. Kia! Give me one, if anyone comes up to you, one swift kick straight between the legs. Pa! And I learned, and Copper was talking about, when I eventually got my black belt. But I think what she left out is it took me 2 tries. So part of the black belt test is you have to break through a board of wood. It's about 4 inches thick. And I'm, 9, 10 years old, right? And I tried once and nothing happened, and I kicked it again and it didn't happen. And I dug down and I grabbed all the strength I had and I cracked it, but it didn't break. And it was, up until that point, it was a failure of my life. And they kneel you down and you don't get your black belt. And I went home and I cried and I cried and I cried. And my mom, she wiped my tears and she said, hey, did you go to the dojang yesterday? I said no. Did you go to the dojang the day before? I said no. So she said, it looks like you have some work to do. And I lived in that dojang. I was there every day for the next 3 months. And when I tested again, I broke that board so clean through. And as happy as I was, thank you. As happy as I was, my mother was happier. She really was, because she gave me that strength. And when Arnold was up here talking about hard work, she inspired me to put in that work, and she could see that success, And that's what she gave me. She taught me how to fight. I remember my mother, she was a lot of things. She wasn't always a punctual woman. And I was, it was fine, but every once in a while I'd be late for a play date, I'd be late for a party. And you know why it was more times than not? Because she ran into somebody on the street. She would pull, and we drove this big gray Volvo, and she would stop traffic if she saw somebody she knew. I'm sure she did this to some of y'all. So, oh, hey, I haven't seen y'all since then. Beep, 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 beep. Oh, wow, we should get together. Beep, beep, you ain't got bumpers, quiet. But she taught me how to cultivate a life full of friends, and I see so many of her friends here today from all these different parts of her life, and I also see so many of my friends here today from so many of my parts of life, and she taught me how to do that. She taught me how to make friends. She was my first friend. She taught me how to do that, and so I want to thank both all of her friends, but all of my friends for being here today. There was nothing that would make my mother more upset than a B+. A B+ was a slap in her face. Because you know what a B+ means? It means that you knew enough, but you didn't work hard enough. There were some times I had some B's and B-, and it was like, well, you just didn't know this stuff, man. But if I brought a B+ home, she was livid. What went wrong? What do we have to do? Who do I have to call? Do you need a tutor? No, Mom, I don't need a tutor. Tell this B+ you don't need a tutor. And I know you don't think you're going to Arnie's house this weekend. I know you don't. And hey man, sometimes it was hard, there were things that I wanted to do, friends I wanted to hang out with, things, extracurriculars I had to cut on out. But it taught me to strive for excellence. And I wanted to center today, so much around all that my mother produced, because it was all excellent. It all had all of her inside it, and she looked at every word of these plays and every word of my essays, I promise. And if there was an edit to be made or a note to be shared, it came out of her mouth. Shoot, she edited Arnold's essays. But it's because, she really was a superhero. And that was one of her superpowers. It's not just that she could see that excellence inside of you, but she could pull it on out. She could reach in your chest and find it in you and pull it on out. And she did it every step of the way. She did it as a child with her family and the people that she marched with in Jim Crow, Alabama, and she did it in college with her students and her collaborators. She did it here in the city where she came, didn't know anybody. She always tells the story. She first came to New York for a beauty pageant, because I think we have a beauty queen photo over here. But she didn't have any of the details, which probably sounds familiar to my mom. And she tells the story, and I forget who she saw in the airport, but she was just walking on through the airport. Say it.
I think it was Ozzy.
You think it was Ozzy? So she saw Ozzy Brown in the airport and said, "I know you." And she got where she needed to go. So she did that. And her students, I know we have one of her students here. Thank you so much for coming, man. And we have so many of her teacher collaborators here. But she must have taught, she taught for 27 years. Not always easy. She taught in the South Bronx, she taught in Riverdale, in Yonkers, in the Upper West Side. And in each one of those students, she saw that greatness and pulled just a little bit out. And God knows she saw it in me, man. No matter what I wanted to do, she saw the greatness inside me and pulled it out when I didn't always see it inside me. Yeah, thank you. I mean, we haven't even talked about chess, huh? So we had a hell of a chess program at the Anderson School, and she took me all over this country to play some chess. And I remember there was one tournament, I forget where we were. We were in Tennessee, something like that. I think we were in Knoxville. And I was 6-0 going into the 7-game tournament, going to my last game if I win as a champion. 4-hour game for a 9-year-old. I lost. And I really cried. And my chess coach, Michael Korchansky, he ripped me out. Because I dropped a piece I didn't need to do as a bad move. And a lot of moms would see an adult man making a child cry and step on up. But she knew it was for me, it was the work that I needed to do. And so she hired me another chess coach and then a third chess coach. And you can see all the trophies that are in my mom's house right now from that chess work. Because she just saw it, she knew I had the greatness, and she just pulled it out. And that was one of her superpowers. It really was. Yeah. So a lot of y'all don't know that she didn't share her her sickness with a lot of people. But she was diagnosed last July with stage 4 colon cancer. And it was right after I had actually shut down my first startup. I love this business. I was really excited about it. It just didn't quite work out how I wanted it to. And my mother was my #1 advisor. We talked after meetings. She helped with marketing. She helped make some cold calls. She was out here, but it didn't quite break. And then she got sick, and you know, I was ready to do anything. You know, I was ready to take care of her full time. I was ready to get, you know, just a job to pay the bills so I could, you know, help her. But after she was diagnosed and she knew how hard she was going to have to fight, what the months of treatment were going to look like, and she said, no. You ain't going to take me time off work. You're not going to take some job you don't want to do. You're going to find the company that you're supposed to build, and you're going to build it. And, you know, it was hard, man, you know, because my mother, I took conference calls from the hospital. I took pitch meetings while I was changing bedpans, and she had to work just as hard to help me as I had to work to help her. But when my company got funded, she was my first call, and she was so proud of us because she saw it in me before I knew what we were going to do, before I knew who we were going to work with, who we were going to help. She saw it. She saw it before I could see it. She saw it for me and pulled it on out. So a lot of people today, they talked about my mom's second superpower, because she was a storyteller, man. I don't know if it was natural, but she always knew how to do it. And I watched her tell stories for decades, man, and she loved to do it. And she would build and build on these stories, and she got just so many reps in telling them that she could educate and inspire and show people about worlds they knew nothing about. And she always came back to storytelling, whether she was an actress. You know, her magic as an actress was as a vehicle to tell these stories, and she spent so many years doing that. And then as a director, oh my God, she could bring a new life to words on the page. And I'm so happy, you know, to have Dianne Harris here, because, you know, when my mother directed that, thank you, dear. And that's what I grew up, is watching her direct and watching her tell these stories. And for so many years of her life, you know, she told stories about history, she told stories about collective, she told stories about where she came from, where we all came from. And I'm just really glad that near the end of her life, she started to talk more about her stories. So I'm gonna do my best. So my mother grew up in Utah, Alabama. That's right. That's right, Utah. We're going home next week. Loved Alabama, man. Daughter of Alabama. And we're in such a moment right now of civil rights awareness. And I'm just so glad to see all these people find their part in the movement. And because my mom did that from the jump. And as a child, you know, and she told me why she did it. She said it was too dangerous sometimes for the adults. Because the adults could get shot at and killed for marching. And so the kids, so she, as a child, marched in face of death threats and violence that she couldn't even all the way understand as a teenager, but she knew that was her role in the movement. And she's just now talking more about it, and we have a feature film that by God's grace I will make for her and for us. About her role and about my grandfather's role in the movement. When she went on to the University of Alabama, she was one of the first black students there. And I'm only really just finding out some of this stuff recently, right? Because the university, was desegregated maybe in '63. She started in '68. So there were only maybe a few dozen black kids on this campus. And she was one of them. And she did not keep her head down one bit. She made sure that everybody on that campus knew who she was. She was a founding member of the African American Association, which is still there today. They just celebrated their 50th anniversary, and they celebrate her as a founder. She was in countless plays and productions. Yeah, clap on. She was celebrated by the university as Bama Belle, and was one of the first black members of the homecoming court. And, this is maybe 3 or 4 years after George Wallace said, segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. Oh well. My mother, and for her activism, as a child and young adult, younger than I am today, that's for sure, she was awarded, I'm going to mess up, Auntie Cheryl, what does it say? Read what she was awarded. Take your time. The lieutenant thing, yes sir. I believe Lieutenant Colonel aide-de-camp in the Alabama State Militia. And I wanted to get it right because you know who had to sign it? George Wallace. Had to put his name on that piece of paper that commended what my mother did. Hell yeah. And she kept telling stories. She kept telling stories in New York as an actress, as a director, as a filmmaker. And man, she would teach us how to tell stories. Because it was so important to her that everybody she met first knew their story, but then knew how to tell it. She put my story in my own damn name. I am Malcolm Wiley Tecumseh Floyd. Malcolm is my dad's dad. Wiley is my mom's dad. And Tecumseh is from my Native American heritage. You can't not know how to tell your own story when it's your own damn name. And in talking to folks in these past couple of days as we've come together to celebrate her life, I've heard just time and time again how my mother empowered people to know their story and to tell their story. My mother had a lot of superpowers, but we're going to talk about one more. And I'm sorry, I know there are some kids here. She did not take any shit from anybody. And I know y'all know. I'm sure there are some people in the tent who tried. I know I tried. Oh man, but she wouldn't take it from anybody. And if you really tried to push her too, she would find this well of righteous anger. And my friends will laugh. They'll know I was always in trouble, because you wouldn't even always see her coming, but you would just hear, Malcolm Wiley, Tecumseh-Floyd! You better get over it! And I would just take off running towards the noise. So I was maybe 4 years old, and I think my mother was taking a class at Teachers College, something like that. And I had to go to the bathroom. I'm a 4-year-old. They wouldn't let me use it. And my mother said, okay, piss behind those books right there. Right there, go ahead. Right there. I didn't, but. And I have to tell this story. It's tough to tell it here, but I'm going to tell it anyway. So my senior year of high school. Earmuffs, Dr. Kelly. Wow, nope. Man, he's an old friend of mine now, that's crazy. Yes, my senior year of high school. I had a math teacher, and I guess I was goofing off one day. And so he pulled in my mother to talk about it. Yeah. Oh, I heard about it, don't get me wrong, but he messed up worse than I did. So they had the conversation, and she's like, oh, trust me, he will do better. And they're just wrapping up, and he's saying, okay, so, it's fall as a senior. What's Malcolm Wiley thinking about college? And she said, he's applying early to Stanford. And he says, huh. Well, there are plenty of other schools, if it doesn't work out. And my mother remembered that. Call it the Dianne Kirksey policy, please. Name it. And I got it. And my mother saw him again and didn't say a word to him. Just gave him that look. Because she didn't take shit. She just wouldn't. She just really, really wouldn't. And as I think about, these 3 superpowers, her being able to reach down inside you and pull greatness out, her power as a storyteller, and her just not taking anything from anybody. That's what we have to take from this tent. That's what we have to learn, and that's what we have to bring into our lives here on out. That's going to be her legacy, and it's going to live in me. It's going to live in all of y'all. And I'm going to tell you the secret to all 3. So, she could see the greatness, and she could pull it out of you, because she always knew who you are. She might not know you well. She might have just met you, but she knew you. And she knew who you were, and she knew where you came from, and what you wanted, even before you could admit it to yourself. So if y'all want to do that outside of this tent, take some time and think about your friends and your loved ones, and think about who they really are. Help them find that greatness and just pull it on out of them. Storytelling this one's simple. Never stop. No matter what room you're in, no matter who you are talking to, tell your story. And you might have to work on it. She'll give you some notes. You might have to work on what that story is, but tell it and never stop telling. every project she had, every cause she had, every project I had, she would talk about it, and she would tell that story. And every time you tell it, and every time you give voice to it, you give it power by telling it. And you'll find you'll get stronger. And the story will get stronger. If it's history, it will feel more present. If it is future, it'll feel a little bit more possible. Every time you tell it. Tell that story. Now, I don't know how she didn't take any shit. I'm still figuring that one out. But as far as I could tell when I watched her raise me as a single parent in New York, didn't always have money for everything we wanted, always found a way to get everything we needed. Didn't always know the right person, always found the person who knew the right person. Didn't always feel like we had the strength to power through, but always found it. And I think this is how she did it, how she just never took anything from anybody. My mother knew her worth, knew her strength, knew her power. And nobody can tell you no when you know your own strength, because you know that no is not true, because you know who you are. And nobody can take that away. So nobody can say, no, women can't do this, black people can't do this. You don't have enough time, you don't have enough money. If you know who you are and your power, you can achieve anything. And she knew that. And I know that. And you all know that. So go forth, remember my mother, and remember these 3 superpowers. Look at your people, find their greatness and help them pull it out. Tell your story, and don't take any shit. Thank you, guys. Thank you again to Dr. Kelly and Horseman for hosting us. Love you. And yeah, I'm here. I know I've heard from a lot of y'all and I owe people some text back, but I'm here. Talk to me. Help me. Thank you.
I loved your pieces. I saw them all.
Oh, thank you.
Dianne, I came because I got an ad. I went, Dianne, that's my cousin. I was so surprised, Dianne, and I knew you were there. I went, oh, yeah. I got the book.
I was looking at you going,
As a matter of fact, I didn't know they were going to do that. That's the picture from that night. From that night. And they're going to put that again. I had longer hair then. But anyway, so good to see you. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And I'm coming back. I'm coming back.
great.
When we can, I'm coming back.
Well, actually,
You just said. Oh, okay. I can't hear.
No, I'm at